When people hear intimidation, they think aggression, and that's not the lesson. In 1973, Robert J. Ringer wrote Winning Through Intimidation, a best selling book drawn from commercial real estate negotiations. The core idea was simple. In high pressure deals, the person who controls emotion controls the outcome, and that applies directly to income property because pressure, urgency, and ego can quietly destroy margin. This lesson is about psychological strength and protecting yield. Now let's look at the five disciplines. Here are the five negotiating disciplines that matter most in income property investing. First, emotional detachment. If you fall in love with a deal, you lose leverage. Second, underwriting discipline. Numbers first, story second. Third, remove your ego from pricing decisions. Winning the deal is not the goal, protecting your return is. And fourth, control the negotiation frame. Bring every conversation back to income, risk, and yield. And fifth, protect investor returns. Every pricing decision compounds over time. These five principles work together. Negotiation discipline isn't about being aggressive, it's about being unemotional, analytical, and precise. Now let's break them all down. Why does this matter? Because in income property investing, small emotional mistakes compound. Overpaying by 5% doesn't just cost 5%. It compresses yield, it weakens leverage, and it reduces refinance flexibility. And weak negotiation discipline multiplies over time. Real estate is a long duration asset. If you start thin, you stay thin. That's why negotiation isn't about personality, it's about protecting margin before the deal even closes. Here's the emotional principle. The person who controls emotion controls the outcome. And that's not motivational language, it's neuroscience. When emotion rises, analytical thinking drops. In negotiation, emotion behaves like price. If emotion goes up, yield goes down. Discipline preserves margin, and in real estate, margin becomes the profit. That's why the first and most important principle is emotional detachment. So let's start there. The highest priority in real estate negotiation is emotional detachment. If you fall in love with a property, you lose leverage. If you feel rushed, you lose clarity. If you believe this is the only deal, you weaken your position. Professional investors operate differently. They never appear desperate. They never negotiate emotionally. They have alternatives and they are fully prepared to walk away. Detachment doesn't mean disinterest, it means control. Because the moment the other side senses attachment, pricing power shifts and margin starts to disappear. Let's look at what emotional bias actually does. When emotion enters the deal, you just start justifying the price. You overlook deferred maintenance, you accept thinner margins, you soften your stress testing, you begin making the numbers work instead of testing whether they work. That's where the risk creeps in. Detachment protects against that. It protects pricing discipline, it forces maintenance awareness, it preserves margin, and it keeps stress testing conservative. Detachment doesn't make you cautious, it makes you clear, and clarity protects investor capital. Emotional detachment protects your mindset. Underwriting discipline protects your capital. This is simple. Numbers first, story second. Validate rents, stress test expenses, model conservative exit caps. Watch your debt coverage. Don't underwrite for perfection, underwrite for durability. Because in leveraged real estate, small assumption errors multiply. Discipline at entry protects your capital at exit. Underwriting discipline isn't theoretical, it's mechanical. This calculator forces you to test your assumptions: cap rate, management expense, exit cap, cash flow. If the deal only works when you compress the cap rate, reduce expenses unrealistically, or assume appreciation, the calculator will expose it. It removes emotion from pricing, and that protects capital. If you'd like your own calculator, the download link is in the description. Protecting capital integrity starts with yield. You buy on yield. You improve through operations. You do not compress cap rate assumptions just to make a deal work. You do not rely on perfect execution to justify the price, and you never assume future appreciation to excuse today's overpay. If the numbers only work under ideal conditions, the risk belongs to you. Professional investors build margin at entry because the capital integrity isn't protected at exit, it's protected the day you buy. Ego is one of the most expensive forces in real estate. It sounds like this: we've already invested too much time to walk away. We can't lose to that other buyer, and we need to win this deal. But professional investors don't negotiate to win, they negotiate to meet a required return. If the deal doesn't hit the number, it doesn't hit the number. Ego turns investing into competition, discipline turns investing into math. The moment pricing becomes personal, margin disappears. Overpaying by 5% may not sound dramatic, but in leveraged real estate it is. It reduces long-term yield, it increases your leverage ratio, it compresses refinance flexibility, and it raises investor exposure. Nothing about the income changed, only the price. And when price rises faster than income, margin shrinks. You're now depending on execution to recover what pricing discipline would have protected. When you overpay, performance becomes mandatory, and that's not where you want to start. Market value isn't based on opinion, it's based on comparables. We look at properties in the same market with the same risk profile and similar condition. On the left, that's the benchmark. That's what disciplined buyers are paying. On the right is your purchase. If your cap rate is lower, your multiplier is higher, and your debt coverage is tighter, you're paying above market yield. It still may be financeable, but it's thinner, and thinner means less margin for error. That's how you identify overpaying, not by emotion, but by the comparables. When you overpay by $50,000, it doesn't vanish, it rolls forward. If you refinance at 75% loan to value, the bank still caps value based on income. That 50,000 isn't financed away. It shows up as lower proceeds, higher leverage, or cash you have to bring to the table. And at the exit, the market prices the property based on the cap rate, not your entry price. So the haircut you took at the beginning shows up again at the end. Overpay once and you feel it twice, and that's why pricing discipline matters. When discipline slips at entry, the consequences compound. Debt coverage tightens, refinance flexibility shrinks. If performance slows, capital calls become possible, and investor trust weakens. One weak purchase can strain an otherwise strong portfolio. This isn't about being conservative, it's about preserving strategic flexibility. Because when margin disappears, options disappear, and that's why negotiation discipline matters. Now let's talk about how you prevent this by controlling the negotiation framework. Control the negotiation frame. In every deal, someone is setting the narrative. Sellers talk urgency, buyers talk competition, buyers feel pressure. Your job is to reframe the conversation, bring it back to income, bring it back to risk, bring it back to yield. Ask clarifying questions, test assumptions, anchor the discussion to market data and cap rates. When you control the frame, emotion loses power because numbers neutralize emotion. Negotiation pressure is predictable. You'll hear things like, we have multiple offers, the offer is too low, this won't last. These are pressure tactics. The mistake is reacting emotionally. Instead, slow the pace. Ask for clarification. Bring the conversation back to the numbers. If they say the offer is too low, ask which assumption they disagree with. If they claim urgency, anchor back to your underwriting. Calmness signals strength. When you stay steady, you control tempo, and control of tempo is control of the negotiation. Before you negotiate, signal strength. When I was a broker, the buyers who closed weren't the loudest. They were the most prepared. Proof of funds ready, lender lined up, clean terms, clear timelines, professional underwriting. That changes the tone immediately. Sellers push back less when they see competence. Negotiation isn't just what you say, it's what you bring to the table. Strength shown early creates leverage later. Every negotiation decision has consequences. Price affects refinance options, it affects equity growth, it affects exit flexibility, and it affects risk. Negotiation isn't about winning the deal, it's about protecting the return. Small pricing decisions compound over time, and when you protect margin at entry, you protect investor capital long term. That's the standard, and that's where discipline turns into compounding. Discipline doesn't just reduce risk, it compounds your advantage. When you buy with margin, cash on cash improves. Refinance timing becomes flexible. Equity builds stronger. Investor confidence grows. Small pricing discipline at entry turns into long-term strength because real estate compounds, and disciplined entry magnifies that compounding. That's the real power. The ultimate leverage in negotiation is the willingness to walk away. The investor who needs the deal least controls the deal most. If the numbers don't work, you step back. Walking away preserves capital, and preserved capital creates future opportunity. In real estate, there will always be another deal. There won't always be another margin. Professional investors negotiate calmly. They underwrite conservatively, they separate emotion from execution, and they protect investor capital above all else. They don't chase deals, they don't compete emotionally, and they don't compress margin to feel productive. They trust the math, and they understand that discipline at entry determines performance at exit. That's the professional investor mindset. If you want to go deeper into the mindset behind this framework, I recommend Winning Through Intimidation. When I first read it, it didn't teach me aggression, it gave me confidence. It helped me understand that negotiation is psychological, not personal. Combine that mindset with strong underwriting and a disciplined calculator, and you become the most prepared person in the room, not because you're louder, but because you know the numbers, and confidence backed by math is the real leverage. In income property investing, we're not trying to win arguments. We're not trying to outtalk the seller. We're protecting capital. Negotiating discipline is investor protection. You buy on yield and negotiate with discipline. Protect margin first. That's how real estate compounds. And if you'd like to apply this framework, download the free calculator in the description. Use it to analyze any deal, verify the numbers, and negotiate from strength. I'll see you in the next lesson.